want to say welcome, welcome, welcome. We are glad to be able to meet in person for the 2021 state seminar. Ms. Damaris is going to come and give you an official welcome on behalf of the state and the state migrant department, but just a couple of logistics first. Masks are not required, but they are recommended since we are piled into this room. And then secondly, lunch is going to be on your own, and we will break for lunch at 12 o'clock. So that's all I have, and we will hear from Ms. Damaris.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our migrant seminar. My name is Damaris Tomlinson, and I'm the State Director for Migrant Education at DESI. And it is my pleasure to welcome all of you on behalf of the Arkansas Migrant Education Program. I think the energy that I felt when I entered into this room is what made me think what we do, the work we do for our children. Our migrant children are the most needed kids in our classrooms. So I think we are driven, all of us are driven by their needs and the needs of their families. So the theme in our seminar is Learning Together We Rise. The first thing that comes to my mind when I have those words was that when we come together, we can achieve uncommon things. So this seminar seeks to empower every one of you, to give you guys the knowledge to take action. And we must not forget what we learned all these 3 days here. We need to go to our communities and share what we learned with our families, with people from the next door, with our neighbors, with people from the school districts that don't have migrant kids, because someday they may have migrant kids. With our community partners, with strangers, even strangers at Walmart, we have to share what we learn here, because only then we will be meeting the needs of our migrant kids. I want to thank our planning committee, Ms. Rebecca Moore, my program advisor, Michelle McBride, one of the Region 2, Holly Budget. I want to thank Laranda Clayton, Heidi, and Ashley for coming together and put this seminar together, because if it wasn't because of them, this will not be possible. So welcome, and it's wonderful to have so many of you here today after a year and a half of not having anyone but Zoom meetings. So enjoy your time here, and thank you for being here. Thank you.
Andrea, we're ready to begin with this first session.
Thank you, Holly. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the session for the Service Delivery Plan and Evaluation presented at the Arkansas State Migrant Education Program Seminar. With me this morning is Carrie Semivan.
Good morning, everyone. It's so nice to see everybody online and in person.
And Carrie is the owner of Meta Associates. I'm a consultant with Meta Associates. I've worked with the Arkansas Migrant Education Program since 2013 as an education consultant and external evaluator, and helping you all with your comprehensive needs assessment and service delivery plan. This screen also shows 2 of our pets. The one on the top left is Rezo, who is Carrie's puppy, or not really a puppy anymore. And then the bottom right is mine, Lolly. And I'm hoping that Lolly sleeps through her nap this morning. So we'd like to invite you all to post any questions or comments in the chat box. Carrie and Rebecca will be monitoring the chat box throughout the session. And for a warm-up activity, if you'll think for a minute about where did you go this summer, or what did you do this summer? And we're going to do a Mentometer activity for this. If you use your phones or your computers and go to mentee.com and enter that code or that number, or you could just take a picture of the QR code, and I will put this in the chat room, the code. And let me display the Mentometer.
Andrea, do you need me to put something in the chat?
I put the code for mentee.com. I think we're okay.
Okay.
And I tried turning off that bell, but I'm not able to. Ooh, someone went to Peru.
My neighbor's yard, my front yard. Allison said she's from Peru.
Very cool.
Lots of working on there too, visiting farms, recruiting.
The son, somebody's son won the World Series.
It's getting smaller and smaller.
I know. Taxi service for my kids. Amen. All right.
Looks like combination of staycations and getting out and about.
Yep.
And work.
And work. There's a lot of recruiting.
Weddings.
Yep.
Everybody put off weddings.
The basketball. So there's a couple of Beverly, Massachusetts. What coincidence. Both kids got married.
Oh my goodness.
All right. Well, thank you for participating in that. So now we're back in work mode. The vocabulary that we'll be using for this session is includes CNA for Comprehensive Needs Assessment, ELA for English Language Arts, of course the MEP is the Migrant Program, MPO, Measurable Program Outcome, the NAC is the Needs Assessment Committee, OME is the Office of Migrant Education, SDP, Service Delivery Plan, and SEA is the State Education Agency. So during this session, we're going to take a look at the continuous improvement cycle as outlined by the Office of Migrant Education. And then we'll take a look at the new service delivery plan. You have a new service delivery plan going into this school year, 21-22. And in that new service delivery plan, you have new strategies and measurable program outcomes. So we want to make sure that you're very familiar with these as you do your planning for this school year. We'll also take some time to review the evaluation requirements that are based on those new MPOs. And then we'll wrap up, follow up, and of course, answer any questions. So by the end of this session, you should understand the continuous improvement cycle, be familiar with the Arkansas Migrant Education Program Service Delivery Plan. We'll review the service delivery strategies and MPOs and learn about the evaluation. There are a lot of handouts for this session, and the link to the handouts. Carrie, you're going to get it, or do you want me to do it?
I'll get it.
Carrie will put the link in the chat room. There are 8 handouts, and most of them have to do with the evaluation for the 21-22 school year. I will show you how the Google Drive is organized. Maybe not, because I don't have it loaded. Oh, I can just do this. Okay, I will show you how the Google Drive is organized. If it's in list view, it'll look like this. If you have it in grid view, it'll look like that. I prefer list view. But here you see a copy of the PowerPoint presentation that I'm using right now, and then all of the documents. Now, a lot of these documents are the documents that you will be using to collect data and submit for the evaluation. It might be helpful when you open one of the documents. For example, if you want to look at the FSI, you download it as a Word document instead of using it in Google Docs, because inevitably something funny is going to happen with the formatting if you use it in a Google Docs. So to download it, I have a lot of files open. So you would just go to File, Download as a Word, and then it'll download it as a Word document. So just wanted to share that tip with you. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the chat room.
Andrea, Rebecca said that they will send a link to the handouts after the session to everyone in person.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's play fact or fiction, and I'm going to do this with Mentometer. It's the same. Okay, go mentee.com. The code, it's actually the next slide on the one that we were using. Let me toggle back to it. This one. Next. Here we go. The Title I-C allocations to each state are based on the number of eligible migratory children identified and the number of eligible migratory children served. Is that fact or fiction? Okay. Most people say fact. Fiction. The statement was missing some critical parts of the allocation. Section 1303A says, state allocation is the sum of the number of migratory children ages 3 through 21 identified, plus the number of migratory children ages 3 through 21 served in the summer, times a fraction of the per pupil expenditure within limits defined in the law. That was kind of a trick question.
It was definitely a trick question, but the key thing is the summer piece.
Yes.
Served in the summer.
Served in summer.
Or intersession, if you have a year-round program.
Okay, the next one, it's a different code, mentee.com. Carrie, you want to put this one in the chat room? And then I will toggle to the Mentee. That's this one. In the SDP, multiple strategies may be aligned to a single MPO, or one strategy may have multiple MPOs to measure it. Fact or fiction? Okay. Fact. Sometimes multiple activities lead to a single outcome measure, MPO, and sometimes you need to look at multiple outcomes for an activity. For example, if the strategy is to provide reading and math instruction in the summer, you would need 2 MPOs, one for reading results and one for math results. Because if you combine them, then we use a very bad word in evaluation. It just sounds like a bad word to begin with. It's called bifurcated. You would have a bifurcated MPO, and we don't want to do that. Okay. The next one, and this is the last question, it's the same Mentometer. Let me just. To be counted as receiving a service in the summer, an eligible migratory child must be enrolled in and attend, virtually or in person, a summer program, a summer school program.
It almost tied.
Yeah. The colors remind me of like a gender reveal. Okay, so we're pretty split on this. Fiction. Summer instructional services count, but so do summer support services. The policy Q&A on the results.ed.gov, which by the way is an excellent resource to visit whenever you have questions about allowable expenses. Currently, for purposes of reporting summer services in the Consolidated State Performance Report, CSPR, under the Category 2 child count, states may include children who were served for 1 or more days in one of the state's summer or intersession programs. And we have a definition of services in our non-regulatory guidance in the CSPR. Okay. Services, and this is the definition. Services are those educational or educationally related activities that directly benefit a migrant child, address a need of a migrant child consistent with the state education agency's comprehensive needs assessment and service delivery plan, are grounded in scientifically based research, or in the case of support services, are a generally accepted practice, and are designed to enable the program to meet its measurable outcomes and contribute to the achievement of the state's performance targets. So let's predict. We're not going to go into breakout rooms in the interest of time, but based on our discussion so far, what changes do you think are in the new service delivery plan? Any changes to strategies, MPOs? What do you think? You can either put them in the chat room. Those of you that are in person can maybe go up to the microphone and call it out, or unmute yourselves and call it out. Any predictions? No one's feeling the crystal ball right now? A bigger focus on summer services. Okay. Pre-K services. OSY. Okay. Virtual learning plans. Yeah, COVID really made the program as a whole look at things a little differently and think outside the box. Okay, let's keep going. What is the service delivery plan? Well, it is a comprehensive plan that describes the services the state will provide directly or through local operating agencies to meet the unique needs of migratory children. In other words, it's the state education agency's operational plan for the MEP. It's your how-to for the MEP. Now, the service delivery plan is part of the migrant program's continuous improvement cycle. And this graphic that you see is in the Office of Migrant Education's toolkit, and it shows how the three components of the continuous improvement cycle are truly cyclical in nature. Before we provide any services, we have to first understand the unique needs of our migratory student population. And that happens through the comprehensive needs assessment process. So once we understand what those unique needs are, then we can develop a program to address those needs. And that happens in the service delivery plan. Now, once we've implemented the plan, then we have to sit back and consider, did we set out to do what we meant to do? Did we meet the mark? And that happens during the program evaluation phase of the continuous improvement cycle. And then it loops back around. So as far as Arkansas and the continuous improvement cycle, in 2020, 2021, the CNA and the SDP were both updated, and we conducted an evaluation of the 2019-20 performance period. Evaluations are always a year in arrears because we have to wait for CSPR data to be verified, certified, etc. Now, also during 2021, the application for the 21-22 performance period included the new strategies and Mpos. And in 21-22, you're implementing the new service delivery plan, and we will be conducting the evaluation of the 2021 year. 22-23 will be conducting an evaluation of the previous year, 21-22, and those are the new strategies and Mpos. And then 23-24, we're due for another update of the CNA SDP, and then we'll be evaluating the 22-23 performance period. Now, the statute, regulations, and non-regulatory guidance are the three main sources that inform and guide the CNA's SDPs and evaluations. And here you see the references for the CNA SDP evaluation in ESSA, the Code of Federal Regulations, as well as the non-regulatory guidance. So the service delivery plan, states are required by the Elementary and Secondary Education Act to develop a migrant-specific plan that will assist migratory children make progress toward achievement of the state's long-term goals and measurements of interim progress. This plan, otherwise known as the SDP, outlines the delivery and evaluation of the services that are provided to the migratory children through the migrant program, and it is developed using the results from the comprehensive needs assessment. Your comprehensive needs assessment was completed in May 2021 by your Arkansas Needs Assessment Committee, NAC. And the NAC consisted of the co-op migrant specialists, as well as the REDS and people from individuals from the Arkansas Department of Education. OME requires states to update their CNA every 3 years or more frequently if there's evidence of a change in the needs of migratory children. In other words, if you have a huge shift in population due to weather affecting crops or something like, et cetera, something like that, or as we had COVID, then you should go in and update your CNA if the unique needs have changed. The primary purpose of the CNA is to guide the overall design of the migrant program on a statewide basis. And the CNA provides an opportunity to review the data to see what needs exist and to provide evidence-based solutions to address those needs. All of that leads to the service delivery plan. And the service delivery plan was completed in August of 2021 by the Service Delivery Plan Committee. You all were fortunate that you all had a very strong NAC, Needs Assessment Committee, so it just made sense to keep those same individuals be part of the Service Delivery Plan Committee. Again, OME requires states to update their service delivery plan whenever the CNA is updated. And the process includes utilizing the solutions from the CNA. We take the solutions that were identified in the CNA and then identify and create strategies to be implemented by the migrant program and then create the MPOs. So as far as an overview, when we look at what are student needs, we talk about concern statements. How do we address those needs? Those are strategies. And how do we know if what we're doing works? Those MPOs and implementing the evaluation. So now let's talk about the service delivery plan, unpacking the service delivery plan. The Office of Migrant Education tells us that there are certain components that are required to include in the service delivery plan, and those include the state performance targets, needs assessment information, service delivery strategies, measurable program outcomes, and an evaluation plan. They also tell us some other components that could be included in the service delivery plan. Well, anytime OME says you could include, we take that to mean you should include. And so we always include information about PFS, the Identification and Recruitment Plan, Parent Involvement Plan, exchanging student records, implementation and accountability plan, and then a logic model. Now, one tool that is very handy is the alignment chart. And the alignment chart gives you a snapshot view of the continuous improvement cycle. It has information from the comprehensive needs assessment, service delivery plan, and the program evaluation. And you do have a copy of this in the Google Drive folder. It's handout number 1, and it looks like this. And so here you see the top section. The goal area is English language arts and math, the state performance target. The primary concern statement, data summary, and needs statement all came out of the CNA process. And then the strategies and MPOs are part of the service delivery plan, and then of course the evaluation questions. So here's the one for school readiness, and I'll go through the strategies and MPOs in just a minute. I just wanted to share with you the overview with using the alignment chart. And then high school graduation and services to OSY. And then something relatively new, fairly new, like within the last 3 years, is a logic model. And basically, a lot of industries do use a logic model. A few years ago, Ed Monahan, who used to work at the Office of Migrant Education, wanted states to start including a logic model. And so basically the logic model shows the inputs, the systems information and material input, the activities, the output or the expected output, and then short-term outcomes, mid-term outcomes, and long-term outcomes. Now, differences between the old SDP and the new SDP. The first difference is the first goal area. We used to have goal area 1 was literacy. I think for a while we were even calling it reading. Well, now it's called English language arts and mathematics, because we combined the two. And the reason we did that, or the reason the committee did that, was it just made sense since all of the strategies and MPOs were parallel for English language arts and math. It made sense to combine them into one goal area. There are fewer strategies. This cycle, we have 13 versus 18 in the previous service delivery plan, as well as MPOs. This cycle, we have 12 versus 14 in the previous service delivery plan. And because of the current state of affairs, there's more of a focus on health and wellness and social emotional learning. So the 3 goal areas for the Arkansas Migrant Education Program: English language arts and math, school readiness, and high school graduation OSY. So let's talk about strategies. Strategies describe specific activities or services that address migratory student needs. These are the things that you do on a day-to-day basis to serve your migratory student population. Programs use migrant funds to implement these activities or services. And strategies are things that if we use migrant dollars to implement these strategies, it is because we've exhausted all other funding sources. Because as you know, Title I-C are the funds of last resort. So we are using migrant funds to address needs that are not being met by any other program. So what are MPOs? MPOs, measurable program outcomes, are the objectives for the migrant program that meet the identified unique needs of migratory students and help them achieve Arkansas state performance targets. So there are two kinds of MPOs. We have process and outcome. Process are the implementation MPOs, and they describe aspects of the program that will be implemented to help achieve the intended outcome. Outcome, those are performance. It describes student, staff, or parent outcomes as a result of implementing a prescribed program or activity. So let's take a look at your new strategies and MPOs. This is an example of what we talked about in the fact or fiction, where one strategy can lead to two MPOs. The strategy provides supplemental instructional services to migratory students in grades K through 12 in ELA and math. This is the core of what you all do in the Arkansas Migrant Education Program. You provide supplemental instructional services. So how do we measure that? Well, the strategy is measured, and I'm jumping ahead, but the strategy itself is measured through the fidelity of strategy implementation, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the MPOs, this is one of those examples where we have to have two MPOs in order for it not to be bifurcated. So by the end of the performance period, 80% of migratory students served in a summer migrant program that participated in an SEA approved supplementary ELA program will show a gain of 3% between pre and post testing on a reliable ELA assessment. And then we have the same one for math. Now, something that I want to point out, the MPO is measuring pre-post gains for the kiddos served in the summer migrant program. That doesn't mean that you don't serve migrant students throughout the school year, because a strategy you can carry on throughout the whole performance period. So you do provide supplemental instructional services to your students year round, but as far as measuring, we're just looking at those that are served in the summer migrant program. Are there any questions on this one? The next one, coordinate or provide relevant and ongoing ELA and math-related professional development opportunities to migrant staff. So by the end of the performance period, 80% of migrant instructional staff surveyed receiving MET professional development will report increased knowledge and skills for supporting the needs of migratory students. Very similar to one we've had in the past. Any questions on that one? The next strategy for ELA and math, provide opportunities for parents to promote the achievement of their children in ELA and math. For example, parent workshops, PAC meetings. So these are going to be measured with MPOs, one for ELA and one for math. By the end of the performance period, 80% of migratory parents who completed a survey will report receiving useful strategies to promote their children's ELA achievement. And then we have the same one for math. And that's it for ELA and math. So then we moved in, and actually I say that's it, but those three strategies are pretty comprehensive for the migrant program as far as ELA and math are concerned. All right, so for school readiness has always been something kind of interesting in Arkansas, in the sense that we used to have school readiness and then we took it out and then we brought it back when it became part of the ESSA state plan. And so now we've really given it the attention it deserves, I think, in this service delivery plan. So the first one, provide migratory children ages 3 through 5 that are not enrolled in kindergarten or other preschool programs with MEP-funded home-based or site-based instruction using an SEA-approved preschool curriculum. By the end of the 21-22 performance period, 80% of migratory children ages 3 through 5 participating in migrant-funded pre-K instructional services will show a gain of 3% between pre and post assessments. So these are the little ones that are actually receiving migrant-funded pre-K instructional services, pre-post. And then the next one is PD, coordinate, provide PD to MEP staff to build their capacity to address the needs of migratory preschool children, for example, social, emotional, health, developmental. By the end of the performance period, 80% of migrant instructional staff surveyed receiving MEP professional development will report increased knowledge and skills for supporting the needs of migratory preschool children. Any questions about either of these? Okay. Provide parents of migratory children ages 3 through 5 with education and materials related to school readiness. So then the MPO, by the end of the performance period, 80% of parents of preschool children completing a survey will report receiving useful strategies and resources to help their child be ready for kindergarten. And then provide wellness services and education /knowledge about basic self-help skills and personal hygiene for migratory children ages 3 through 5, not in kindergarten. And then provide relevant referrals and advocacy for health services and resources to the parents of migratory children ages 3 through 5. And the MPO, by the end of the performance period, 65% of eligible migratory children ages 3 through 5 who are not in kindergarten will receive health and or advocacy services and resources. So then we move to high school graduation, OSY. And the first one has to do with credit recovery. Provide credit recovery opportunities through an SEA approved credit recovery program, along with tutoring where needed. And so the MPO, by the end of the performance period, 80% of secondary migratory students who participate in a MEP-sponsored credit recovery program will earn credit. And then the next one has 3 strategies. The first one, provide PD for co-op staff and school districts about graduation and post-secondary opportunities, for example, high school graduation requirements, credit recovery, on-track, post-secondary opportunities. Coordinate and provide services for secondary migratory students about college and career opportunities, and provide support and information in the home language to the extent possible for migratory parents of secondary-aged youth to promote the achievement and high school graduation of their children. So ultimately, all of those lead to the MPO by the end of the performance period. 80% of secondary age migratory students who attend an MSAC meeting will report increased knowledge of college and career opportunities. So we really want to focus on getting this information to the students. Coordinate and provide instructional and support services to OSY that lead to developing the skills needed to further their education. For example, language, life skills, technology, computer, supplementary ESL. So by the end of the performance period, 70% of migratory OSY will receive MEP-funded instructional or support services. And one of the neat things that that came out of this service delivery plan is we have a new column in the service delivery plan planning chart called Ways to Implement the Strategies. So I shared with you the strategies, and sometimes let me open the
And I put the link in the chat to the handout.
Okay, let me just. Right here. If you open the service delivery plan decisions and planning chart. So it's one thing to, let me find one that's maybe a little more. Okay, here we go. So we have these strategies: provide migratory children ages 3 through 5 that are not enrolled in kinder with MEP-funded home-based or site-based instruction, and coordinate and provide PD. What the committee did was they thought of ways to implement the strategies. For example, complete enrollment verification and placement profiles for pre-K students, coordinate with parents and pre-K service providers to ensure migratory pre-K children are served, provide MEP-funded literacy and math services for children not enrolled in other pre-K programs, provide PD related to preschool health concerns, child development, et cetera, and then the resources needed to carry all of these out. So, if you're thinking, well, you know, we always provide, or we always implement the strategy doing, you know, ABC, are there any other ways that we might be able to implement this strategy? You can look here for some additional ideas. And so I think that might be really helpful for a lot of providers. So don't forget that column on the service delivery plan decisions and planning chart. Okay.
All right, so before we move on to looking at the evaluation, did anybody have any questions or observations or anything they wanted to share with what Andrea shared regarding the strategies and the MPOs? Just want to give you all a chance to, if there was anything you wanted to share. Ooh. Okay. All right, well, so you've all seen all the strategies in the MPOs. So let's look at how we're going to evaluate the strategies and the MPOs and everything else that goes along with the evaluation and the responsibilities of local projects. Go ahead, Andrea. So the 21-22 evaluation, as Andrea mentioned, is the first evaluation of the new strategies and MPOs that were created by your SDP committee. The evaluation is going to look different than it has in the past. And one thing we wanted to share with you all is that the SDP committee worked really hard to make sure that the strategies and the MPOs were things that all types and sizes of projects could implement. So I think one of the things that they focused on was having strategies that were very broad, that, you know, any level of project could implement any of those strategies. Okay. Thank you. So the new MPOs and strategies, again, will be evaluated during the 21-22 performance period. We will complete the evaluation next year because we have to wait to collect all the data and then verify and certify all the, the data that is collected for the CSPR, which are, everything you guys enter into MIS 2000. And then one of the big components of the service delivery plan is the evaluation plan. So all the details of the evaluation plan are included in the updated SDP. Okay. So why do we evaluate migrant programs? One, we want to help educators, parents, and community leaders find out what works and what doesn't. That's super important. We don't want to keep implementing something that's not working. We want to look at the success of education initiatives on the participants. We want to determine what are the highly successful practices. We want to help programs target areas for improvement where needed. and then also to show what programs are doing to achieve excellence. So that's one of the components of the evaluations that Meta always does. We include that qualitative piece where we include people's comments about the impact of the program, really provide kind of that life to the evaluation. And finally, because evaluation is required for all state MEPs. So it is something that all state MEPs have to do in order to be compliant with the requirements from the Office of Migrant Education. Okay. So typically we have two types of evaluation included in our evaluation reports. The first one is the performance results evaluation. This looks at progress, migratory student progress towards the state performance indicators 1 and 5. These look at progress towards the state assessment results in reading and math and graduation rates. This part of the evaluation also looks at the Government Performance and Results Act measures. These look again at the state reading and math results, as well as grade level promotion, graduation, and then Algebra 1 completion. Then this section also includes the write-up for the progress towards Arkansas's MEP measurable program outcomes. Then we also have a section that looks at the implementation evaluation. And this, the biggest part of this section is measuring the fidelity of the implementation to the strategies in the service delivery plan. To what extent are local projects implementing the strategies? And I'll show you the fidelity of strategy implementation tool in a little bit. Hopefully you're all familiar with that. We also look at whether or not projects were implemented as described, what worked, what didn't, and why not. And then also that perceptual and observational data. So let's dig into 21-22 data collection requirements. So handout 3 is it's an all-encompassing data checklist. So for local projects, this lists all the data that you will need to submit for the evaluation during 21-22 for co-ops and projects. And it includes, on the back side, it includes all the links and the QR codes to the surveys that are online. So you all have an opportunity. You can do the surveys online, or you can do the paper surveys, whatever's going to work best for your project or co-op. So you can text, you can send the link to parents on by a text message. They can take a picture. You can have up on the screen the QR code, and you can just use your camera on your phone to access the QR code. So there's lots of different ways to get the surveys out to students, parents, and staff. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go through the data that we're collecting for, or that needs to be collected for the MPOs. And the way we have this sorted is by data source rather than by MPO. So we thought it would be easier just to kind of focus in on the different data sources that we have created for collecting this data. So this first set of MPOs, the data source is Form 1, and that's the reading, math, and PK assessment tracking form. So when Andrea was going through the strategies, there was 3 of them where we need to collect pre and post test scores. One was for reading results, one was for math results, and one was for school readiness assessment results. And all of these can be collected using Form 1, and it's an Excel spreadsheet. Co-op specialists will submit this to Meta. And so it's pretty simple. It's got ID number, student last name, student first name, their age or their grade, their PFS status. That's always something very important, because for all MPOs, we have to disaggregate the data by PFS and non-PFS. The name of the assessment, whether it's math, reading, or preschool, and then the pretest score and the post-test score. And that last column will automatically determine what the difference is. So when you submit these Excel spreadsheets to Meta, then we don't need the student names, we just need the ID numbers. So that will help, eliminate the need to have these submitted in a secure way. So we put those columns in there for you all so that when you're collecting the information, it's easier for you all to collect it. But we don't need the student names once that form gets submitted to us. Cindy asked a question, where are these pre-tests and post-tests? So for reading and math, it's summer. So when a migrant program is providing summer school, you would want to pre-test and post-test those kids that are participating in math and reading. And I think most summer programs already have these systems in place. And I'm going to go through here. I think the next slide, Andrea.
Okay, but it's a local, Cindy, it's a local pre and post test. It's not one set pre and post that the whole state uses. It just depends on whatever curriculum or program you're using during your summer programming.
Yeah, and that's what this slide talks about. So one of the things that we ask for is the type of scores for reporting, because we are looking at gains.
Hey, Carrie.
Yes.
Just for a second, we all do this. All this information does apply to all of us, but we have some new staff here, so we just wanted to add in the disclaimer that a lot of this data portion of what they're talking about is done by the specialists and the REDs. And a lot of the testing is done by the specialists in the REDs. So we didn't want anybody to get nervous thinking that we're asking you to do any kind of additional data collection or any kind of additional testing. These are the same types of surveys that we've done for parents and for staff in the past, and the same type of things like MyOn or what's the new one called? Project Smart, just the different programs that we have used in the past. So we're not putting any extra work on you today. Don't be nervous about that. This is just an explanation of why we collect data and what we do with that data once it's collected.
Okay. So the scores typically that we ask for, since we're looking for gains, are raw scores or scaled scores. And in some cases, some states, when they are collecting data for the regular school year, which you all are not, they use NWEA map, just anything that's already, the kiddos are already being assessed with. So as Andrea mentioned, types of assessments, we want like formative and interim assessments. The goal of the MPOs are to look specifically at the interventions being provided, the outcomes of the interventions being provided by the MEP. So state assessments would not be appropriate, course grades would not be appropriate, those kinds of things. We really want to look at classroom assessments, teacher developed assessments, those kinds of things that really can measure the impact of the MEP on reading, math, and school readiness, rather than looking at something that is kind of a giant leap like a state assessment result. We have to report those for the evaluation, but that's not, the MPOs do not include that level of assessment. So you could also be using something like MobyMax or Project Smart. Those obviously come with pre and post testing. So that's another thing you could also use. Okay. So MPOs 1B and 2B, the way we collect information on those two MPOs is through the staff survey. So those look at the impact of MEP professional development on staff skills. One for supporting the needs of migratory students and one for supporting the needs of migratory preschool children. So MEP staff would complete the online survey by August 15th, 2022. So we look at, the full performance period, which runs from September 1st through the end of August. This is kind of a brief picture of the staff survey. That is handout number 5 in the Google folder. And this is the QR code and the link to the online staff survey. Most staff usually complete these online. I think it's a little easier to do it, but we also will be glad to accept paper versions of the survey, depending on what works best for you all.
And Carrie, I think again, the co-op specialists do this collection. They disseminate the surveys to the staff and collect them for the state.
Okay. MPOs 1C1, 1C2, and 2C are all collected through the parent survey. So all three of these look at the impact of MEP services on parents. Did they report that they received useful strategies to promote their children's ELA achievement or math achievement, and that they received useful strategies and resources to help their child be ready for kindergarten? So in order for these to have, parents to be able to complete this parent survey, that means that they would have needed to have that type of training, parent activities or training or resources to help them be able to respond to this parent survey. So you would only send out parent surveys to the parents that have participated in MEP parent activities. And instead of this being, I'm not sure if you all have had parent training evaluations in the past, but this is a parent survey that you would just do once a year. And it asks parents to reflect back on the impact of the MEP activities that they participated in during the year. So this is the parent activity. It's short but sweet. It's in English and Spanish. And again, you can have parents complete this online using the QR code or the link, or you can have them completed on paper and submit the paper versions to us. MPO 3B is collected using a student survey, and this looks at the percentage of secondary aged migrant students who attend an MSAC meeting, reporting that they increase their knowledge of college and career opportunities. So this student survey is not going to be for all students across the state. It's only going to be for those students that have attended an MSAC meeting. So again, this is the, go ahead, Andrea. This is the student survey. It asks kind of what was the impact of, what impact was the MSAC meeting on preparing them or their goals for future learning and for post-secondary education. So we've got the QR code on the paper version of the survey, so it's handy. And then the QR code in this PowerPoint, as well as the student survey, the link to the student survey. Again, it can be parent paper or online version of the student survey, whatever's easiest for the students. And Andrea, is this one in English and Spanish? Can't remember.
Yes.
Okay. So MPOs 2D, 3A, and 3C are all data that's entered into MIS 2000. So 2D is the number of migratory children ages 3 through 5 who received health and or advocacy services and resources. 3A is the number of secondary migratory students enrolled in an MEP credit recovery program that received high school credits. And 3C is the number of OSY receiving MEP services. That could be an instructional service or a support service. These are all data that is already entered into MIS 2000, but we're going to be using that for the evaluation. And it looks like that MEP staff are asked to submit data in MIS 2000 by August 31st of 2022. And then the FSI, which is handout number 8. This is the rubric-based tool that we use to determine the level of implementation of the strategies in the SDP. And Andrea talked a little bit about this, but this is, are you going to the FSI?
Yeah, do you want me to?
Sure. So on this, each page of the FSI is anchored by a strategy. So strategy 1.1 is provide supplemental instructional services to migratory students in grades K through 12 in ELA and math. And like Andrea said, this is year round. This isn't just summer, even though we've kind of pulled out the MPOs just to be for summer. But this strategy addresses services to migratory students throughout the performance period. So you can rate your level of implementation of this strategy on 5 different levels: not evident, aware, developing, succeeding, or exceeding. And for our purposes, we consider a rating of succeeding to be proficient. So it would be a sufficient provision of ELA and math instruction to migratory students, frequent progress monitoring, frequent student participation, and sufficient record keeping. So that's kind of what we're shooting for is a rating of 4. Now, the nice thing about these is these are total self-assessment tools. There's not part of any sort of, at least I don't think so, monitoring or any sort of gotcha. This really is a tool that you all can use to look at the level of implementation of the strategies that are in the service delivery plan. The second, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's correct. There's no gotcha, but it is part of the monitoring tool. When the co-op specialist and or ADE go out to monitor, they do have the FSI as part of their monitoring tool.
Okay.
Okay.
So the second part, we asked that you check the ways in which the strategy was implemented in your projects using MEP funds. So it could be after school support, balanced literacy, benchmark assessments, books, collaboration with other school programs, tutoring, in school or after school test taking strategies, things like that. And then there's a box down below where you could cite additional strategies that are not listed in here. And all of these boxes, you can just click on them and they will check. They'll put a check in there. They're automatic, as Andrea is demonstrating. Thank you, Vanna. And then the row below it is the documentation that is kept on site for the strategy. So you could have and really this documentation is more for your own purposes to be able to determine when you get a small group of people together to assign ratings, you can look at some examples of documentation that you have on site. This isn't anything, at least I think I'm not speaking out of turn, but typically this isn't anything that you have to have, exhaustive examples of documentation, student lists, enrollment records, things like that. It's more so to jog your memory so that you're able to remember. Sometimes if you're doing it over the summer and you have to remember back throughout the whole year, it's helpful to have some examples. And then we ask if there's a strategies rating, if this strategy or whatever strategy we're talking about is rated developing or below, to please indicate how you plan to improve the implementation of the strategy in the future. And then you can also check if a strategy is not applicable to your project. For example, you don't have any preschoolers. So things that are in this, the school readiness strategies may not be applicable to your project. Okay. So Andrea, if you go back to the slides, the rest of this is in the.
But do you want I was going to do the last.
That's in the slides.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So just kind of a reminder, I know we just kind of talked through it, but let's go a little bit more in detail about the FSI, the what, why, and the how. So what is the FSI? It's a component of the implementation evaluation of the MEP. It's the rubric-based tool that I just showed you. It measures the level of implementation of each strategy. So these are all going to be the new strategies because the FSI has been developed to determine the extent to which MEP services are delivered with fidelity. So why do we have this tool? It's required by the Office of Migrant Ed to inform the implementation evaluation. And then it also, on a side note, it's probably one of the most useful evaluation tools out there, is to serve as a self-assessment to guide local MEPs in implementing MEP funded services. So one of the things, the way we recommend doing it is to gather a group of key staff. It can be virtual or face-to-face, and can be 3 to 5 staff, whatever. However, whatever you all feel comfortable, it can be your whole team. It depends on how you all want to go through this process to discuss your project's implementation of each strategy. So, and you're thinking about it for the whole performance period from September 1st all the way through the end of August. During your discussion, check the ways in which the strategies were implemented and the documentation that's relevant to your project. And then if there's other ways that you implemented the strategies, or you've got other examples of documentation that you would like to share, we would love to include that. And then we typically will try to add those kinds of things to the FSI in the future. So I showed you that the tool, it's got the 5-point rubric from not evident to exceeding. And then again, if the strategy is rated developing or below, indicate how you plan to improve the implementation of that strategy. And then there's the place for indicating if the strategy is not applicable. And then in the past, we've had just kind of a list for parent involvement and professional development activities. So it had the date, the topic, and the number of parents attending. We've updated that in the new 21-22 FSI so that now we're just kind of looking at it by goal area. So for this first one, we're looking at parent activities. So the parent activities that would have addressed English language arts and math. So the number of parent activities provided during 21-22, and then the number of parents attending. And this can be a duplicated count because we know that parents attend more than one activity, oftentimes. And then the second one is preschool kindergarten readiness, then high school graduation services to OSY. And then we've also got a row for other, because a lot, sometimes you're going to have parent activities that don't address specifically one of these 3 goal areas. And then the bottom chart looks the same kind of data, but for professional development. So the number of training sessions provided during 21-22 and the number of staff attending. So again, this can be a duplicated count. So this is a little different than it has been in the past. All right, we kind of went through that pretty quick, but that's your new program evaluation. Hopefully it doesn't look too different than it has in the past. We don't have any sort of surveys that look at each professional development or each parent activity. They're more, staff and parent surveys that are completed once a year. And so I think that's been a change from previous years. And, but anyway, if anybody has any questions or thoughts about what we just shared, we're happy to help. Looks like Loranda had a comment in the chat. So back to the SDP, the last school readiness MPO, 65% of pre-K receive support health services is all encompassing. This MPO is not specific to our MEP funded pre-K students. Even if served in HIPPY, ABC, Head Start, etc., we still expect to offer support health services to 65% of those preschoolers. All right, so let's look at this. And Loranda, that's a question, correct? So I would say yes, even if, we want to provide needs-based services. If they're already getting these services in other programs, then you wouldn't necessarily need to. But I don't know the extent to which the other programs, HIPPY, ABC, and Head Start, provide support services like the MEP can provide.
Or if you are able to collect that data.
Yeah. So this percentage, this was these aren't random percentages. They were based on baseline data. And so I can't remember what the baseline for this one was. It's probably in the planning chart, Andrea.
I'm unmuting for Loranda. She's going to speak for just a minute.
Okay.
Okay. Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so I think this was one of those MPOs that we discussed that in this past year, we only served the kids that were not served elsewhere, but there's still opportunity to serve those kids with health related or supplemental services. And we're not saying every single one in your district, but the MPO does say 65%. So that's a pretty good portion. So just make sure that we're getting some type of packet to them, or you're meeting any needs that are still available to them that no one else meets. And we can talk about it later when we get into pre-K training or other stuff. Just didn't want you guys that to be lost on anybody.
Thank you, Loranda. Anybody else have any questions or observations about the evaluation? Any clarifications anybody needs?
Okay, so Holly, we're done.